Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds a year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even fake deaths. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems, sophisticated data analysis techniques.
This is connected to a bank account and a second mobile phone number.
And a newly formed dedicated police unit.
Police, get back!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers, cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the police insurance fraud team, IFED, is hunting down suspects.
He needs the phone, because otherwise we'll come back and we will keep coming back until we get him, OK? Because this is quite serious, it's not going to go away.
A would-be con man comes a cropper.
There's no way that it could have happened as it was described.
And a claimer is shamed in the gym.
There was no form of dysfunction visible in any way, shape or form.
This is Milton Keynes, home to Michael Richards. 8 years ago, Michael was a passenger in a serious car crash. The vehicle smashed into a wall, killing the driver, but Michael pulled through. Unfortunately, the driver didn't have insurance, so Michael's case was passed on to the MIB, Motor Insurers Bureau, an organisation set up and funded by the insurance industry.
The MIB is there to compensate innocent victims of uninsured and untraced drivers. And that means a whole variety of injuries. It could be a minor injury, it could be a catastrophic injury. We're there to help those people to provide a fund from which they can claim compensation.
Details of the crash and Michael's medical treatment were passed to the MIB.
Michael Richards said that he had a head injury as well as other injuries, and he presented in a way suggesting that he had such a bad brain injury he was virtually mute. He was saying he needed care, he was saying he needed a lot of help, he was saying he could hardly speak, and that he needed lots of help and assistance to carry on his normal life. He made a claim to the MIB because the driver wasn't insured, and that was his only route potentially to compensation. What's called a schedule of loss, which is essentially a shopping list type claim that's presented to us by his lawyers, totaled some £2.35 million.
The severity of the head injury that Michael was claiming for meant that the MIB was dealing with a huge payout for care and assistance, so it was natural for them to look closely at the case and order medical examinations.
When he saw one of our experts, he uttered 15 words in an 80-minute interview. He said that he was seriously impaired by his injuries.
But as the MIB continued its investigations, they noticed some strange inconsistencies.
Subsequently, we obtained his police records. Now, this showed, subsequent to the accident in the car, he was arrested for another offence. And when we obtained the PACE interview notes, it was quite clear that he was talking perfectly normally to the police officers. And also, it was also clear that he'd been giving us a false address.
The MIB was by now so suspicious that it called in expert investigators specialising in covert filming.
We live in a surveillance society. Effectively, fraudsters are aware that they might be placed under surveillance. And to that end, we have to stay one step ahead of the game. And the equipment that we have to use has to be cutting edge. It's as simple as that.
Using all its expertise to stay hidden, the surveillance team went deep undercover to find out what was really going on.
What we did discover when we eventually turned up and undertook the surveillance on him was that he was visiting a gym. Filming in a gym is obviously going to be quite a difficult scenario for the operatives to find themselves in. They're likely to be in sportswear. There's not a lot of room to hide a camera in a pair of shorts or a sports vest.
But they overcame these challenges and were able to film Michael without being detected. What they discovered was jaw-dropping. He was talking and bantering with other gym users.
There was no form of dysfunction visible in any way, shape or form. He was a man that was just going about his normal routine or daily life, and wasn't hampered in any way, shape or form by the purported injury that he'd sustained.
It was solid evidence of lying and fraud.
We presented this evidence to Mr. Richards via his lawyers, who promptly withdrew his claim.
But the MIB wasn't prepared to let the case drop. It wanted to see Michael's attempt to defraud them punished.
We took the case to court. The judge accepted that he had tried to mislead the court. He was guilty of contempt of court, and consequently, Mr. Richards received a prison sentence.
Michael was sentenced to 4 months in prison for falsely claiming £2.35 million.
For us, it felt excellent that someone who was claiming a 7-figure sum, their case was pushed all the way through into the criminal court. It felt as if that person had received their just desserts.
One of the largest ever insurance fraud rings is busted.
In that 18 months, they could have made £3.2 million.
And a swindling claimer is shamed for life.
What this shows you is that it's not OK to do that. And do you realise what impact that will have on your friends and your family if you get caught?
Police, get back!
Insurance fraud is on the rise. Hunting and punishing the criminals responsible is an elite police squad called the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department was set up earlier this year with the sole intention of combating the rise in insurance fraud. We are a dedicated unit that works exclusively tackling that problem.
A growing number of fraudsters are prepared to lie and cheat their way to money they don't deserve. But they'd better watch their backs, because IFED is on the case.
Since our go-live date early this year, we've effected over 120 arrests in the first 6 months, and we are continuing to work up and down the country, bringing these offenders to justice.
IFED is determined to win the fight against fraudsters.
We're out to stop them in their tracks. There's every chance that an IFED detective may come knocking on their door to arrest them for committing an insurance fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
Yeah, we're looking to go to 2 addresses today to arrest 2 suspects who we believe have conspired together to plan a crash between a coach and a car, purely for the purposes of submitting fake personal injury whiplash claims. The evidence that we'll be looking at today, we'll be looking to find any documentation in relation to any of those insurance claims, any vehicle documentation of the vehicle that was involved in the collision with the coach, and also one very important thing is mobile phones, because we believe there has been some sort of mobile phone contact both before and immediately after the crash between individuals on the coach and the main person who we know has planned this particular fraud.
IFED believes that the 2 suspects hope to make money by falsely claiming for whiplash injuries sustained in the fake crash. If the claim had paid out, with numerous personal injury claims and damage to vehicles, they were set to make over £100,000. IFED needs to find their first suspect, and they also need to find evidence that links him to the car and the coach passengers. They begin their search for the suspect at his mum's house.
Police?
Oh, City Police. Who's here? Just yourself?
Yeah.
Where's his flat?
The first suspect's mum claims that she doesn't know where his flat is.
She's saying that he lives in his own flat, moved out 4 months ago. She doesn't know the door number, doesn't know the flat name or anything else. So she says she's got no contact number for her own son, everything else. So she's clearly lying to us, clearly obstructing us. Probably so that she can put a phone call in as soon as we've gone and sort of tip him off, really, that we're on our way.
She tells them to try his ex-partner's place, but says she doesn't know the exact address of that either.
Right, what is the front door? What colour's the front door? Let's start easy then. I do think you're lying to me, and the patience is wearing a bit thin. How do you get contact? So he doesn't phone you. Do you have a mobile? You don't have a mobile. He needs to phone, because otherwise we'll come back, and we will keep coming back until we get him, OK? Because this is quite serious. It's not going to go away.
Using the rough information she's given them, their next stop is the house of the first suspect's ex-partner.
Police. Is he in?
No, he doesn't live here with me.
Do you know his address?
No.
All right, OK.
The ex-partner has no idea where he is, and the hunt is beginning to feel like a wild goose chase. Their investigations have given them one last address to try.
He's opening up, he's opening up.
They arrive at the block of flats and quickly establish which apartment the suspects are in.
That's where they are?
Yeah.
Are they in?
I think so, I'm not sure.
Finally, it seems like they're getting closer.
Hello, mate.
Not here, mate.
He's not here. Does he live here?
Lives downstairs.
What number?
I don't know.
Yet again, the first suspect seems to have eluded them. But suddenly, they get a lead about the second suspect.
Do you just live here on your own, do you?
No, I live with my son.
What's his name?
When the man reveals the name of his son, they realise they've found the second suspect. Then he backtracks and confirms the first suspect is there too.
Easy. Right, where are they?
Just hang on.
What? No, not hanging on. Hello, word with you, mate. Can you come in the front room?
But when they enter the premises, it's clear he's hiding from them.
Is he in there?
It doesn't take long to flush him out, though.
Yeah? All right. So don't give me no more all right?
Right, mate. Have a seat.
Right, you're being arrested for conspiracy to defraud, OK?
Although both suspects are under arrest, it's still far from being a watertight case. It's vital that the team find documentary evidence of the suspected fraud, or the charges won't stand up, and the whole case will be dropped.
What I don't want to do, mate, is turn this upside down and shake it, yeah? Which I will do if I have to. But if you give us what I'm asking to, there's no need for me to do that.
The enhanced security features on top-of-the-range cars means that thieves are losing out, and fraudsters are being stopped in their tracks too. Head teacher Alan Bromley drove a car that befitted his status, a BMW 3 Series. But if he'd gone for a more down-market car, he might have got away with his scam. One night, he drove to a carol service and parked nearby, keeping the keys in his possession the whole time. Afterwards, he got a lift home because he'd had a few drinks. A short time later, his car was found ablaze 6 miles away. Alan contacted his insurers to say his car had been stolen and set on fire. But right from the start, things didn't add up. Ursula Coulibaly is head of financial crime and worked on the Alan Bromley claim.
We first suspected that there may be something wrong with Alan Bromley's claim when he phoned through to our fire and theft teams. Some of the reports that we had from the police and the fire brigade, some of the information that was in there again contradicted the story that Mr Bromley gave us when he initially made his claim.
The insurers were particularly concerned about the timings Alan had given them.
Independent engineer's report that we asked for, again as part of the investigation, specifically set out if the car was stolen without keys, what tools they'd need to have to steal the car, and more importantly, how long it would take. With the timings that Mr Bromley gave us and at the time that the fire brigade attended, there's no way that it could have happened as it was described.
Alarm bells were ringing, and the insurers asked a company specialising in vehicle examination to look at what was left of the car. Phil Hoyes is the engineer who performed the inspection.
When I found the vehicle, it had sustained quite heavy fire damage. The condition of the car was approaching a complete burnout.
Even so, he was still able to carry out a thorough assessment.
My remit was really quite straightforward for examining the car. It was to determine whether there were any signs of forced entry. When I got to examining the locking system and the doors, there was no sign of forced damage to the locking systems or around the door hinges or the door frames themselves or the door mechanisms.
So, if the doors hadn't been forced, then the only way into the car for a thief would have been the windows. But there was a problem there too.
A close examination inside the doors found the glass from the windows that had melted inside the doors, showing that the windows weren't smashed. If the windows had been smashed and forced entry had been gained that way, then you'd find the fragments of the glass inside the vehicle and it had melted in that position.
He hadn't lost the keys, there was no forced entry, and the windows hadn't been smashed. So how could the car have been stolen? Alan Bromley's story was going up in smoke, but he wasn't going to budge.
Despite the information and the evidence that we'd managed to gain from our investigations, Mr Bromley's been adamant throughout that he's not acted in a fraudulent manner.
There was one more piece of evidence for the insurers to analyse, and it proved to be the most important. The key to what really happened was just that, the car key. It contains a microchip, which records detailed information about the car that can be analysed later.
It does give us information such as what the mileage was at the last time it was driven and also the last time it was used. When we did the keys analysis report, it contradicted Alan Bromley's case. What it told us actually was that the car had been used after that he told us he'd used it last. In addition to that, it was just shortly before the fire brigade were called.
They now had all the evidence. The only thing missing was a motive. But luckily, the keys analysis report, together with evidence from the financial contract for the car, gave them the information they needed.
Within that contract, there was terms around how much mileage he could do per year. Once again, from the keys report, that helped us to determine that actually Mr Bromley had gone way over his mileage allowance. In the event he either gave his car back, he would either have to pay the entire financial agreement in full, or he'd have to pay the excess for the additional mileage, which was significant. We believe that was the financial motive for what happened.
With evidence and a motive, the insurers informed Mr Bromley that they wouldn't be paying his claim. At that point, the police moved in to arrest him. But even then, Alan Bromley stuck to his version of events.
Mr Bromley has always denied that the claim that he submitted was fraudulent throughout our investigation process and once it went to court.
Alan Bromley was prosecuted for false representation, and he was given a 12-week suspended sentence. Although he stood to lose a lot of money on the vehicle contract, the cost to Alan Bromley's reputation and career is arguably greater. He's currently banned from teaching.
In Mr Bromley's case, he was upstanding in the community, he was a head teacher, well thought of, and what this shows you is that it's not okay to do that. And do you realise what impact that will have on your friends and your family if you get caught? If you're ever thinking about doing something like this, think again. Insurers are a lot better at detecting fraud, and now we've got the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, and they will take action, and don't let it be you that they come to next.
While some fraudsters exaggerate claims for genuine car accidents,
and the infectious brake, yeah.
others demand compensation for collisions that never even happened. These so-called accidents are known as staged crashes and can generate a lot of money. This makes them an attractive prospect for criminal gangs. As far back as 2006, Longmeadow Farm near Luton was on the police radar as a possible setting for organised criminal activity. At the time, the police had no actual evidence of any wrongdoing, so they decided to set up a surveillance team to find out more. Detective Constable Mick Keneally, who has since retired, was part of the operation.
The purpose of doing the observations was to establish what criminality the group of people at Longmeadow Farm were involved in, if any.
And it wasn't long before the police surveillance at the farm began to bear fruit. When this blue Astra arrives at Longmeadow, it looks to be in pretty good nick. But without ever leaving the farm, 24 hours later, it's so smashed up that it's become a complete write-off. It's clear evidence of a car being deliberately damaged.
There were vehicles, obviously, clearly, that were being damaged at Longmeadow Farm, so that gave us the view that they were involved in criminal activity involved around stage-induced, exaggerated accident claims.
Staged accidents were just the start. There were more revelations to come when the police expanded their investigations.
We made contact with the insurers and established that some of the vehicles on the farm were also subject of accident claims. And from that, we were able to establish who the accident management company were that were involved in that. And that came down to a company called Swift Accident Management. It was only when we looked at who was managing all those accidents. It turns out they were in business with the people from Longmeadow Farm.
Accident management companies exist solely to manage and process claims from people involved in accidents. The link between the people who were damaging cars at Longmeadow Farm and the people who operated Swift Accident Management immediately aroused suspicion and pointed towards Swift operating fraudulently.
There are genuine accident management companies, but there are a lot of accident management companies who are either completely fraudulent or do some fraud in that they exaggerate claims, they add ghost passengers to claims, so they make money fraudulently.
Ghost passengers is a term for when an accident management company adds fictitious passengers to a genuine accident in order to bump up the amount of personal injury being claimed. It was a technique that Swift used to cheat more money out of insurers, but the fraudulent behaviour didn't stop there.
At the same office where they were, in Leagrave Road, there was a taxi firm called Kim's Fleet Cars. The manager of Kim's Fleet Cars was the brother of the manager of Swift Accident Management. So they had a number of drivers there and a number of cars that they used in fraudulent claims. So they created their own business, and they do that by staging accidents where an accident's never happened. They're completely fictitious, so that any money that's made goes directly to the accident management company, and it's a way of making a lot of money from a single claim.
There was now enough evidence to convince the police they had uncovered a huge web of criminal activity. Between them, the criminals at Swift and Longmeadow Farm were creating staged accidents on an industrial scale.
Swift Accident Management themselves were in business between August 2005 and November 2006. So in effect, they were in business for about 18 months. In the 18 months, they dealt with 180 accident claims, and out of those, there were 230 individual claims. So the extra 50 were for personal injury claims. So it was a lot in that period of time, and of course, that generates a huge amount of money.
It looks like the level of criminality didn't stop there. It seems one of the gang members was also engaged in a more basic form of theft, stealing CDs from the wrecked cars. In terms of claims already paid out and claims submitted, Swift stood to cheat the insurers out of a mind-blowing amount of money.
If you looked at what Swift could have made in that 18 months, they could have made £3.2 million.
The police operation ensured the gang operating Swift and Longmeadow Farm didn't get away with it. Once they had evidence of cars being deliberately damaged, the police moved in. The sheer scale of the criminal operation meant that 750 people gave statements, 60 people were arrested, and 36 vehicles were seized. The hearings alone lasted 3 years, and 37 people were convicted.
Police? Oh, City Police.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED, is on the hunt for suspects it believes are linked to an alleged crash for cash scam. After being given the runaround, IFED eventually tracks down the man they believe to be the ringleader to a flat belonging to the other suspect on their list. The IFED team cracks on with their search for evidence.
Is that them all? What I don't want to do, mate, is turn this upside down and shake it, yeah? Which I will do if I have to. But if you give us what I'm asking to, there's no need for me to do that. All right, mate.
What they're looking for is proof of the link between the two men and the accident with the coach and the car.
Mark, found two mobile phones that we're interested in. We've found some documentation. I believe it links into the offence that we are investigating. We've also found a number of bank cards, which I want to compare to certain elements of the offence.
But that's just the start. As the IFED team searches the flat, they turn up signs of a separate offence.
He's got a big box of Moody football kits.
So they're basically just, what, they Everton?
All different ones.
So they're all counterfeit gear, basically, then, yeah? Huh? Yeah. Right. Bag it all up.
Does it work? How old is it?
They decide to get the suspects taken away to a local police station, but the search for evidence continues.
Police, hello?
DS Mark Forster leads the search in the first suspect's flat.
This is how we found it when we've come into the bedroom. There's a box that may have been taken off the wardrobe or some other place. There's a bag here which is empty, so I can only presume that all of this documentation was in this bag. So at some time shortly before we've arrived and arrested him this morning, he's obviously had a quick rummage through this, maybe in an attempt to try and get rid of evidence, basically, that might be key to our investigation. He's obviously been tipped off the fact that we were looking for him, because obviously we've been to his mother's address, we've been to his ex-partner's address. We know that when we've arrested him upstairs, his mobile phone sat on the table, ringing with his mum, trying to get in touch with him. She told us that she didn't know where he lived, didn't know his address, didn't have his contact telephone number for him or any way of getting in touch with him. So I'll be going back and having a word with Mum later on today, I think.
After sifting through the paperwork, Mark finds the evidence he's looking for, a link between the suspect and the vehicle.
We found a driving licence belonging to the driver of the car. That hit the coach up the rear. We found insurance documentation relating to the insurance of that vehicle, MOT certificates, and a current MOT certificate for that vehicle, and various other scraps of paper with lists of names which we believe may be those people that were on the coach at the time of the accident who have subsequently put in personal injury claims. So it's nice because it links the gentleman who lives here to both parties, those on the coach and the driver of the car. And it's fantastic evidence for us, and certainly more than we thought we'd find.
Both suspects are currently on bail. If charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and found guilty, they could get a jail term of up to 10 years. In the first 6 months of operation, IFED has already busted 80 suspected fraudsters. This pair aren't the first, and they certainly won't be the last to get a knock on the door from the elite police squad. Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even fake deaths. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
Everything that we do has to remain cutting edge.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques.
Without having something like this, we would always be one step behind.
And a newly formed dedicated police unit.
Police, get back!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers, cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department busts into the house of a suspect.
You're right, we got a warrant.
One claimer discovers that no win, no fee doesn't apply to fraud.
Somewhat surprisingly and shockingly, found that no, she was not on that bus.
And a supposedly injured fraudster's story falls apart.
Most striking thing of the 12 days footage is there was no wheelchair.
Being a fraudster is a full-time job, as one would-be conman found to his cost when he failed to keep up his deception whilst under surveillance. In 2006, lorry driver Graham Loveday was the victim of a minor road traffic incident. The details were passed to the driver's insurer. On the face of it, this was a straightforward low-speed collision, as CEO David Slater reveals.
Mr. Loveday was driving along the road and he passed a petrol station, and as he passed the petrol station, our policyholder pulled out and hit the rear wheel. Mr. Loveday initially went for a medical report, and that report initially said that he got a whiplash injury with some bruising, and that the whole injury would resolve itself inside 5 to 8 months.
So far, so simple. Graham stood to gain the standard amount of compensation for whiplash, around £2,500. But 12 months after the accident, things seemed to take a dramatic turn for the worse.
Then subsequently went for a second medical report about a year later, and in fact at that medical report the doctor was unable to assess him because he said he was unable to get out of his wheelchair.
It was an astonishing development. Mr. Loveday's condition had deteriorated to the point where he claimed he often required a wheelchair and even on good days had difficulty getting around.
And he subsequently claimed that he was pretty much wheelchair bound and obviously had constant pain all the time and was unable to do many of the basic tasks of everyday living and needed extensive care from his wife.
It wasn't just physical injuries. He also said he was suffering psychologically.
Mr. Loveday also claimed that he had a phobia of car travel. So he literally said that if he got into a car, that would immediately make him vomit.
With such extensive injuries, the claim for treatment and care was mounting.
Our legal advice was that in this case, the cost to us would have been approximately £1 million.
The insurer was becoming suspicious.
I think the first thing that rang alarm bells to us with this claim was when we received that second medical report. Certainly if someone has got an injury so severe that they're going to be wheelchair bound, normally that would be apparent very early on.
It just didn't add up.
We had these two medical reports showing completely different injuries, so clearly we wanted to get to the truth of whether the injury really was anywhere near as severe as he was now alleging.
The insurer went straight to a group of specialist undercover investigators, led by Tim Young.
Ultimately, our task is to gain an objective slice of their life. So it's simply a case of turning up and maximising the amount of footage that we can get so that others within the legal process can form a good, objective opinion of someone's capabilities.
Their mission was to covertly film Graham Loveday to see if he was as injured as he claimed.
The Graham Loveday case centred around the fact that we were dealing with an individual who was purportedly suffering from some form of physical disability, but not only that, there was psychological trauma as well. Around the area of his home address and around the overall area, he was presenting himself as a male who was actually quite disabled and walked in such a way as to suggest that he had a fairly significant disability.
What they saw at first seemed to fit with his statements, but then they got a tip-off that changed everything.
We've been informed that he was likely to be going on holiday, so we placed him under surveillance over a given period of time.
Claimant is now getting inside the driver's seat.
The man, who claimed to be sick when he was inside a car, was observed driving for several hours to his holiday destination.
He was found to travel from where he lived in South Wales all the way to the Isle of Wight.
Now with a left indication. Left indication.
It's a significant journey for someone who is purportedly nervous of driving and incapable, I guess, of sitting for long periods of time as well.
The surprises continued. Far from appearing tired or anxious after the lengthy journey, on arrival he seemed rejuvenated and was walking freely.
The contrast in his abilities and his overall demeanour was very significant. He was totally relaxed.
As he unwinds in what he thinks is the safety of a secluded campsite, he starts to demonstrate signs of his true physical ability.
I think that one of the most interesting pieces of footage that we gained was him lifting a generator.
He's now lifting something heavy out of awning.
And actually starting the petrol generator, so like a lawnmower, starting the engine in that way.
It seems to be pulling at something, i.e. a generator pull cord to start.
On his return from holiday, he continues to perform a variety of strenuous physical activities.
There were a number of other specific examples. So, for example, he's seen servicing a car, which obviously involves a lot of bending over, which clearly you would not expect someone who's wheelchair-bound to be able to do.
The length of the surveillance meant they hadn't just caught him on a good day.
There was 12 days footage in total. We'd obviously been told that Mr. Loveday was wheelchair-bound. He needed a wheelchair if he travelled any distance at all. And the most striking thing of the 12 days footage is there was no wheelchair. It was very clear to us in this case that Mr. Loveday was grossly exaggerating the extent of his injuries. It was really rather difficult not to be absolutely certain that this was a fairly audacious attempt at a major fraud.
They had all the evidence they needed. The next step was to bring Graham Loveday to justice.
This case ended up in court. We felt it was really important to make it clear that Saga Insurance is not going to tolerate frauds of this type. Judge found Mr. Loveday guilty. Mr. Loveday was sentenced to 9 months in prison. Yeah, I think Mr. Loveday's motivation was undoubtedly agreed to try and get some more money. We certainly fought him in this case, yes.
A pair of claimers ashamed on camera.
Our expert didn't accept that there was any possibility whatsoever that they'd been injured.
In the fight against the growing problem of insurance fraud, an elite squad have come together to form IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
Insurance fraud isn't a victimless crime. £50 of each premium you pay each year goes to the fraudsters. We have been set up to tackle that problem.
This dedicated team works tirelessly to bang up the crooks and con men getting rich off other people's money.
It is our intention to create a climate of fear for the fraudster. There's every chance that an IFED detective may come knocking on their door to arrest them for committing an insurance fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
By April 2012, after only 6 months of operating, they had already busted 80 fraudsters, adding up to £12 million of fraud under investigation.
These people are criminals. These are nasty people. They don't go out to work on a Monday morning like most people do. Their work is submitting insurance fraud claims.
Today, the IFED team, led by DS Mark Forster, has come to raid the home of a suspect wanted for questioning about car insurance fraud.
But this particular individual accepted numerous motor insurance policies. We think somewhere in the region, just this one company, somewhere in the region of 60 or 70 motor insurance policies. The insurer puts the loss at somewhere in the region of £50,000.
The large number of motor insurance policies belonging to the suspect has led IFED to believe this indicates fraudulent activity. They want to arrest the suspect and question him in detail about what's going on.
Got the warrant then?
They're not expecting the inhabitants of the house to be cooperative and are ready to break their way in if needed.
Open up space! Put a door in 3 seconds! Police, get back! Police! Get back! Stay where you are!
You're right, we got a warrant. Do you want to get yourself up, Donny?
Get back, buddy.
You're decent at the moment under there?
The first person they find is the mother of the suspect.
She's laying in bed, she's just getting up now, and we're obviously speaking to her to try and find out where her son is. We'll crack on with a search now. We've got a warrant to execute a search at this premises, OK, and that's been authorised by the City London Magistrates Court. It's in relation to fraud-related offences concerning your son.
Well, he lives at it. I kicked him out, actually.
Do you know the address where he's staying at the moment?
No, I don't.
Do you have a contact number for him? That'll be a good start for 10.
While Mark questions the suspect's mother in the lounge, the team starts searching the rest of the house. The hunt is on for documentary evidence linking the suspect to the fraud, so the case stands up in court. Unconvinced that the suspect has actually moved out, they focus on an upstairs room that might be his bedroom. But the first thing they find could be proof of an altogether different sort of crime: illegal drugs.
So there's cannabis in which bedroom?
There's 2 bags there. These are all empty bags with bits and remnants in.
There's an amount of cannabis upstairs in that bedroom.
and there's a small amount down here as well. So obviously we're going to be seizing that and speaking to know more about who's around ownership, possession of that.
The search continues. The next thing they discover is a hidden safe concealed behind a fireplace.
Do you last access this safe? Whose safe is it?
The key's been left in the door, so it's a simple job to open it up. Could this be where the evidence they need is stashed?
I'm arresting you on suspicion of possessing a controlled drug, cannabis.
Some chancers take advantage of genuine collisions to cheat their way to money they don't deserve. But insurers and transport companies are fighting back, using every high-tech tool at their disposal. CCTV is one of them. From time to time, buses are involved in minor incidents. Huyton bus station was the scene of one such incident. Valda Grant handled the case.
It was a number 15 bus travelling into Huyton bus station in the northwest. The bus was going slowly into the bus station, and there were some railings on his left-hand side, and he caught the railings with the bus as he was pulling into the bus station.
Not long after, the bus company heard from two of the passengers who'd been on board at the time.
These were two 17-year-old passengers on the bus, and they both claimed they'd got whiplash injury, two with whiplash injury. One said she'd a shoulder injury because she banged her shoulder against the window.
This was an unexpected outcome, which didn't tally with the slow speed of the impact. The bus company wasted no time in checking the onboard CCTV to see if the footage supported the claims. The women can clearly be seen on the bus, but at no point do they seem to sustain any injury from a collision. In fact, the incident is so low impact, the passengers aren't even seen moving. When the women leave the bus, they even appear to be smiling.
When we got our own medical expert, we sent him the CCTV, plus the claimant's witness statements where they explain what happened in the accident and how they were injured. Our expert didn't accept that there was any possibility whatsoever that they'd been injured.
The civil claim proceeded to court, and the bus company used the footage to make their case. Luckily, justice prevailed.
The court dismissed the claim, and the claimants didn't receive any damages.
Without CCTV cameras, it could have been a very different result, and the two women might have got away with their false claim.
It is a sad state of affairs that you need the CCTV, but it would be sadder if we didn't have them, because we would not be able to fight these claims.
When it comes to trying their luck with bus companies, some claimers are even more shameless than the previous pair. At least they were on the bus in question. The next story concerns a would-be fraudster who attempted to claim for injuries that she couldn't possibly have suffered. Jonathan Crooks, the manager of Transcare Law, works for the bus company involved and investigated the case.
Anissa Nasser was in Queen Street bus station in Liverpool.
It's a busy station, and one of the buses was hit at low speed by another bus. Not long afterwards, the company was contacted by Anissa Nasser.
When she presented a claim for personal injury on the basis that she had been an occupant of the bus when it was hit. She claimed that she was jolted and that she suffered whiplash-type injuries to her neck.
The case was passed on to one of the bus company's own claims handlers.
Our claims handler will have checked the CCTV footage from the inside of the bus to make sure that Anissa Nasser was indeed on the bus when it was hit.
What they saw blew her claim out of the water.
Somewhat surprisingly and shockingly, found that no, she was not on that bus. In fact, the camera showed her standing in the bus station watching what was happening.
Watching what was happening and clearly coming up with a scheme to scam money from the bus company. The pictures show her stood outside the bus, watching the impact, and then getting on the bus that was hit after the collision had happened. The CCTV pictures were more than enough evidence for the bus company to reject her claim, but they didn't stop there.
Also, what she didn't realise was that she wasn't in a no-lose situation, because once we'd rejected her claim for compensation, we were determined not to let matters lie there, and that we would try and, as a deterrence for other people, take her to court.
It was impossible to argue with the evidence from the CCTV camera, and Anessa Nasser was found guilty.
The sentence for Miss Nasser was a 4-month suspended prison sentence, 180 hours community service, and she had to pay the prosecution legal costs as well.
But perhaps she's paid an even greater cost than the sentence itself.
She's got a criminal record now. A lot of doors are now shut to her in terms of future employment, applications for mortgages, etc., etc. People just seem to think that they can take an opportunistic pop at people like us, and they live to regret it.
Technology is a key weapon in the fight against insurance fraud. Our next would-be swindler was caught out when she failed to cover her tracks and left an electronic footprint leading to her downfall. In 2011, Jodie Jackman was one of the drivers in a serious car accident. It involved 2 motors and a total of 7 people, including the other driver, Katie Ashcroft. Jodie reported the accident to her insurer and accepted liability. Claire Laver is a lawyer who worked on the case for the insurer.
7 claims for personal injury and other vehicle-related losses were made. The third-party driver received a sum of money for the damage to her vehicle, as did the policyholder, and in total that was around about £11,000.
This payout covered the damage to both cars and the personal injury claims for all 7 people involved. That appeared to be that, until, due to an unrelated matter, Jodie was suspended from her admin job. A routine trawl through her work email account by her employers revealed a surprising email exchange.
Where they had suggested getting involved in fabricating an accident and making a fraudulent claim.
Swiftcover's Chief Claims Officer, Robin Reams, was passed the full details of the incriminating exchange. One email from Katie to Jodie reads,
"All you got to do is carry out instructions when given. You've got 3 in your car. Looks better if we both get handled by different people."
Jodie replies,
"I'm scared, me."
Katie reassures her.
"I'm scared too. Both the guys have done it before, so it's sweet."
It was very clear from the emails that this was a deliberate attempt to defraud an insurer by creating an accident that didn't take place and for 7 people to make personal injury claims that they didn't suffer.
Further digging revealed the motive behind the fraudulent claim was financial.
The 2 girls were undergoing some financial strain at the time. One of them had a loan with a loan shark, another one had some £5,000 worth of debt.
They were desperately in need of the £11,000 payout from the insurer. It turned out they had maximised their money by persuading 5 other people to pretend they were passengers and put in fake injury claims. All 7 were taken to court.
The result of the court case was that 7 pleaded guilty to conspiracy to defraud, and of those, 3 received a 12-week custodial sentence, suspended for 1 year, and the other 4 received a 6-month community order. This seemed to be an opportunity for them to make some quick cash. The result is it didn't work out that way. They got caught. They lost their jobs. They have a criminal record. And it sends a very clear message to fraudsters out there that we will find them and we will do all we can to protect innocent, law-abiding policyholders.
But the story didn't end there. The insurance company decided to pursue the women for the money they'd cheated out of them.
They will have to pay back the £11,000 that was paid to them by Swiftcover in the end anyway. So it was a completely pointless exercise which has left them much worse off than they'd intended.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED, has come to arrest a suspect they believe is involved in car insurance fraud. He's nowhere to be seen, but they've chanced upon a hidden safe, which they're hoping will contain some of the evidence they need to make the case stand up.
Do you last access this safe?
As they go through the contents, they find an array of checkbooks and documents, which they bag up for further investigation.
It's a security measure to make sure that should they be subject to a burglary, that nobody gets all their their banking details, all their checkbooks, credit cards, passports, etc. Quite ironic, really.
But there's still no sign of the suspect. IFED persuaded the mother to hand over a contact number for her son, but they've had no luck with that either.
She's going straight through to voicemail. We've left him a number of voicemails, asking him basically to get in touch with us, to basically get himself here.
Their persistence pays off, and he eventually rings back.
Where are you? Sheffield. What are you doing up there? What vehicle are you driving? How are you going to get in?
IFED has done their homework on the suspect. When they eventually make contact, they deliberately reveal some of the information they have, so he knows they're onto him.
I know which vehicles you've got access to. I just want to know which vehicle you're going to come in.
Meanwhile, the family guard dog seems to be having an off day.
Full focus, brilliant. So you're going to be here in an hour? Don't muck me about. I'm trusting you now to turn up here within the hour. Lovely. See you then.
Usually we find that that's enough to draw him back to home, as it were, especially when his mum's here on her own.
Although the suspect has promised to return home, there's still no sign of him after 45 minutes. The IFED team is starting to lose patience. Suddenly, another call comes in, but it's not from the suspect. It's from a man who says he's his lawyer.
I'm going to put the phone down in a minute, sir, right?
The lawyer explains that the suspect won't be coming to the house as promised. The IFED team thinks they smell a rat.
If he's a professional solicitor, he's just laughing down the phone to me. Anyway, that's a nice distraction for us. Where were we?
Their search is turning up an ever-increasing quantity of drugs.
While we're sitting here, there's a waft of, quite a strong waft of cannabis coming from just behind where my colleague sat there, and so that's like the third and fourth sort of small quantity of cannabis we found in the house now, in sort of 3 or 4 different rooms.
With drugs uncovered in several locations around the property, it's important that IFED investigates the illegal substances thoroughly. The mother is the only person in the house, and Mark takes the decision to arrest her in connection with the drugs.
She's the only one on the premises and there's drugs all over it, so she can come in.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of possessing a controlled drug, cannabis, and on suspicion
What, tiny
of
mouse?
conspiring to defraud. The cannabis that's been
God.
found in this house. So,
What? Right, a joint.
what? There's been cannabis found in this
Yeah,
house.
a joint,
Up
yeah.
there. Yeah, it's an offence.
Just then, the suspect calls again.
Hello, was that you? I've had a few phone calls from Mohammed. He tells me that you want to turn up at the police station, not come here. And the time, but you've got 15 minutes to get here, so you've run out of time.
You're arresting me.
Why am I arresting her? For cannabis possession and conspiracy to defraud. Your timing couldn't have been more impeccable. She's just been arrested and she's going to the police station. Are you coming to the home or to the police station?
There's scales, there's grinders used for grinding down cannabis resin and bits and pieces like that, scales for weighing the drugs out.
Suddenly, there's a commotion at the door as someone tries to enter.
Oh, mate, hang on. Who's that? Come on, fella.
It's her son, but unfortunately not the son IFED is after.
Yeah, well, just leave it, man. Like, what can I do? I've just woke up, man. Get that out, I'm asking what.
Although they didn't get their hands on the suspect, IFED has found significant amounts of potential evidence to help with their case. It's been a successful raid. Mark is confident they'll eventually get their man.
He is a very well-known person and he will come sooner or later to our attention or to the police's attention, and he'll get arrested sooner rather than later if he fails to give himself up today. So we will catch up with him eventually. Would have been nice to have got him today, but like I say, we've secured all the evidence from the house, so we're not going to lose anything in relation to our investigation.
The police eventually arrested the suspect and questioned him about the alleged fraud. He and his mother are currently on bail, and the investigation is ongoing. In the short amount of time that IFED has been in existence, the team has had a huge impact, investigating over 300 suspected insurance scams and taking the fight to the fraudsters. Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds a year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even fake deaths. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems, sophisticated data analysis techniques.
This is connected to a bank account and a second mobile phone number.
And a newly formed dedicated police unit.
Police, get back!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers, cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed.
No, it's the police. Can you open the door, please?
Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department tracks down suspects involved with potentially fraudulent checks.
Arresting on suspicion of money laundering.
A high-performance sports car gets a roasting.
The petrol tank caught fire and the vehicle went up in flames.
And a martial arts expert gets the chop.
This individual said that he couldn't instruct martial arts anymore. Clearly, this video evidence showed the opposite, really.
A bustling city centre would seem to be the perfect place to blend in unnoticed. But for would-be insurance fraudsters, even in the busiest cities, there's nowhere to hide. In 2008, a bicycle journey home was abruptly cut short by an accident, which would have far-reaching implications for the man involved. Jeff Owen is a consultant with national law firm Greenwoods, which has a specialist anti-fraud group that worked on the case.
This claimant was riding his bicycle along the road when a taxi pulled in front of him and clipped his bike, causing him to fall off. He had suffered injuries to his neck, to his arm, to his hip and to his leg.
The driver accepted liability, and the cyclist contacted the insurer to make a claim for the injuries he'd suffered. Not unusually for a claim like this, he was given a medical examination.
Some of the symptoms that are reported to the medical experts were that he was not able to walk very far and he was unable to ride his bicycle. Now, if somebody's not able to do that, then it's indicative of quite serious injury.
And the repercussions of the accident were significant.
As a consequence of these injuries, the claimant suggested that as he was a martial arts instructor and very much into physical exercise, he wouldn't be able to run his business and that the business would quickly fail. And this alerted the insurers to the possibility that this claim might be more expensive than they had initially thought.
This was borne out when they received a claim for compensation that ran well into six figures. As time passed, the injuries didn't appear to be healing as predicted by the medical expert. This was a concern for the insurer.
The medical evidence in this case suggested that this guy should have been recovering within about 12 months of the accident, but when it was apparent that he wasn't going to do so and that he wasn't going to return to his business, it was decided to place him under surveillance.
The insurer approached undercover filming experts MC Investigations, who set up an operation to covertly film the claimant. The undercover investigator who led the project has to remain anonymous so that he could continue to work in the field. Before starting the surveillance, he studied the case fully.
The first thing we do is we read through the medical records, so we get a bit of a feel and a profile on the claimant, and then we went out to verify that he did live at the given home address, and once that was established, we then carried out a recce, a reconnaissance, so that we familiarise ourselves with the area that the claimant lives, which vehicles we're going to use, what manpower and what equipment we're going to use.
Once they'd done the groundwork, the surveillance started in earnest.
But for a man who wasn't able to walk very far, it was clear that he was able to do so, and he went on very long shopping expeditions.
But that on its own wasn't conclusive evidence, so the covert filming continued.
And eventually we got the very useful information that he was riding his bike again. And he was followed for quite a distance over a busy road, pedalling away merrily.
What they saw cast even more doubts on the impact of the claimant's alleged injuries.
He actually rode to a gymnasium where he then proceeded to carry out
martial arts and instructing martial arts.
This activity directly contradicted what the claimant had told the insurer.
He said that he couldn't instruct martial arts anymore. Clearly, this video evidence showed the opposite, really.
And the investigation didn't stop there. They collected evidence from a range of sources.
The intelligence team then get to work on other angles, as a result of which they go to the social network sites of people who are connected to him. And one of these suggests very strongly that although he's not got a formal business in any gym, he is again conducting fitness classes.
The evidence against the claimant was mounting. He appeared to be exaggerating his injuries for financial gain.
The activity he was now performing was inconsistent with the level of disability that he was alleging. This claim eventually built up to £300,000, and I can say very definitely that he received nothing like that, even for the genuine injuries that he had sustained.
The compelling video footage meant that the huge claim he made was never paid out, and the money he eventually obtained was a relatively small sum to cover the actual injuries he had suffered in the accident. Sent on his bike by his insurer, this exaggerated claim will be on his record for years to come.
I've just reversed the car into a lamppost.
An inept conman is confronted with evidence of his deception.
All right, bye. Let's go make you a very rich man.
His face was a little bit of a picture, I'm told.
And all bets are off for one would-be fraudster.
The customer had been to a casino and lost over £67,000.
Police, get back!
Insurance fraud is on the rise. Hunting and punishing the criminals responsible is an elite police squad called the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department was set up earlier this year with the sole intention of combating the rise in insurance fraud. We are a dedicated unit that works exclusively tackling that problem.
A growing number of fraudsters are prepared to lie and cheat their way to money they don't deserve. But they'd better watch their backs, because IFED is on the case.
Since our go-live date early this year, we've effected over 120 arrests in the first 6 months, and we are continuing to work up and down the country, bringing these offenders to justice. We're out to stop them in their tracks. There's every chance that an IFED detective may come knocking on their door to arrest them for committing an insurance fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department of the City of London Police is on the trail of 4 suspects that it wants to arrest as part of an investigation into an alleged insurance fraud and money laundering scam. The initial information about the case came from an insurance company, which suggested that an employee was acting fraudulently.
As a claims advisor has been accessing claims, adding third-party vehicles to those claims that are totally spurious, don't exist, and then having checks issued to other people.
The employee, who's believed to have played a key role in the fraud, has already been arrested. IFED is now looking to arrest and question those who allegedly received the fraudulent payouts and then paid a cut back to the initial suspect.
And one of those people we're going to see now is one of those people that's received a cheque, I think, for just over £3,000. So in total, the insurance company have lost over £70,000 in total. I think 11 cheques have been issued, which are totally fraudulent and should never have happened. And the insider has obviously then taken a cut of those cheques. Well, we are specifically looking for banking documentation, bank statements, bank account details.
With 4 arrests to make, there's no time to waste as they follow up a lead for the whereabouts of the first suspect.
When did we come in and have a word with you?
They arrive at the first address and make contact with the mother of the first suspect.
Your son, where is he? Will you allow me in to have a look?
She tells IFED that her son is not at home, but the team searches the house to make sure.
You keep telling us to wait, but we need to speak to your son. Where is he?
The mother insists that she doesn't know where her son is.
I know you're not well, but I need to speak to him. Where is he?
She doesn't give them anything to go on, and it's a frustrating result for the IFED team.
She was unable to give me a contact number for him. How you can't know where one of your sons is, I find quite hard to believe.
So it's on to the next address to search for suspect number 2.
Lights, the police. Can you open the door, please?
Once the door is eventually opened, they ask whether they can speak to the suspect. It's just the break they need, and they enter the house to question him further.
Right, we're from the Insurance Fraud Unit. and it's believed that you received a cheque to the value of £6,550, which was paid into your bank account. Okay. So in respect to that, I'm arresting you on suspicion of money laundering. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something later on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
It just doesn't make sense.
What doesn't make sense?
We've been giving him money.
We don't know where it's gone.
With fraud detection becoming ever more sophisticated, this next claimant certainly took a gamble when he tried to collect a payout he didn't deserve. Paul Hubbard is the head of counter-fraud for the insurance company involved.
We received a claim, as we often do, from a customer saying that unfortunately he'd been broken into, and as a result of the break-in, he'd lost certain items.
At first glance, it seemed like a routine household insurance claim. But then the policyholder got back in touch to add on several high-value items to the claim.
4 days afterwards, he was now claiming for 2 laptops. If you'd normally notice something like that was missing from the word go. So as a result of this, the claim was now £29,000.
The sudden large increase in the sum being claimed meant that the insurance company decided to investigate further. They discovered that there was no proof of purchase for many of the items.
So as a result of that, we then instructed a specialist investigator to go and find out more about what had actually occurred here. They contacted the police, and we started to find there were discrepancies between the story that he had told us when he notified us of the claim and the story that he'd given the police when he alerted them to the fact that there'd been a burglary to get a crime reference number.
The inconsistencies were starting to mount up, and the investigators continued to look into the claim. What they uncovered next shed completely new light on the case.
Our investigator found out that in this case the customer had been to a casino prior to the burglary taking place. This person had lost over £67,000. It starts to give you a bit of a motive for what he might be doing.
More evidence surfaced that put a question mark over the claimant's story.
We also found that the receipts that he had provided for the 2 laptops were fake, that these laptops had never been purchased. That's good.
It was all the evidence the insurer needed.
So we presented this customer with the evidence that we'd found. So we'd found the fake receipts, we'd found out about his debt to the casino that had occurred before the burglary took place, and we declined his claim on the basis that we felt he was trying to commit fraud.
The case didn't proceed to court, but having the claim rejected on the basis of fraud has major repercussions for the policyholder.
It will have serious ramifications on their life because they'll find it very difficult now to get insurance, they'll find it very difficult to get financial products, and it's something that they have to tell people when they're taking out insurance.
The would-be conman trying to compensate for his casino losses failed to come up with a watertight story. But he looks like a mastermind compared to another insurance cheat that Paul and his team also investigated.
I like to be all legal. I just thought I'd ring the insurance company and just let them know what's happened.
Mr. Machin called us to explain that he'd had an accident where he put his car into reverse, thinking he was going forward, and then just accidentally reversed straight back into a lamppost at high speed, he said.
I've just reversed the car into a lamppost. It's just nearly written it off. Was there any injuries to anyone?
He had his girlfriend and his girlfriend's son in the car with him, and he explained to us that they were both injured as a result of him reversing into this lamppost.
Well, everybody's got neck pain now. Even I've got it.
The policyholder didn't have the sort of insurance cover that would allow him to claim for the damage to his car.
He was effectively claiming the injuries to his partner and his partner's son, who he said were both injured. He didn't go into any detail at that point as to how they were injured, how badly, but he did say that the son was going to hospital.
The insurer immediately sensed that John Machin's story didn't quite ring true.
Some of the things about the accident didn't add up to our experienced claims handlers, such as the fact that he said he reversed at speed into a lamppost. He was also very, very vague about the circumstances of a motoring conviction that he had as well. So all of those things put our experienced claims handler on alert that perhaps things weren't as Mr. Machin was telling us.
The claims handler followed the procedure for dealing with a suspicious claim.
Started to ask a number of questions of Mr. Machin just to extract more information from him. All we're looking for effectively is for people to tell us the truth. As a result of those questions, we were again increasingly concerned that the information wasn't accurate.
Alarm bells were ringing by this stage, but there was no actual proof of fraud. However, at the end of the call, John Machin made a critical error when he failed to hang up properly and gifted the insurer all the evidence they needed.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for calling today. Thank you, then. Goodbye. All right, bye, bye. I can make you a very rich man. If this is it, and if it all comes off this, I know it's going to take time, but when it comes to that time, right, this will make you a very, very rich man.
When we heard that phone call for the first time, we were really surprised, horrified to a degree that somebody would be so blatant about the fraud that they're trying to commit and feel so good that they were taking money from effectively innocent customers who have to pay more premium.
The insurer passed its evidence to the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department of the City of London Police. At the time, the team had just been formed to fight the mounting problem of insurance fraud, and this was one of the first cases they investigated. They moved in to arrest John Machin and take him for questioning.
When brought back to the police station and the various procedures are entered into, he was subject of a taped interview. Questions were put by the investigating team, which he flatly denied. So we said, "Thank you, Mr. Machin. Would you be prepared to listen to this short recording?" And we pressed the play button and played the recording that the insurers had provided us with. His face was a little bit of a picture, I'm told.
This is it, and if it all comes off this, I know it's going to take time, but when it comes to that time, right, this will make you a very, very rich man. I won't have to go to work no more. Oh, yeah.
The case then proceeded to court, and he was found guilty.
In this case, Mr. Machin was convicted in court of insurance fraud. He received 200 hours community service and a 4-month suspended prison sentence.
It was the result the insurer wanted and helped to send out a message to any other would-be fraudsters.
I think people like Mr. Machin see insurance companies as a giant pot of money that they can just dip into whenever they feel like.
But that's far from being the case, especially now that IFED is actively pursuing those criminals who try and commit insurance fraud.
The first conviction of any new unit is always a milestone, so this was a particularly pleasing one, and it was also an added bonus that it was a slightly amusing set of circumstances around that first one, so it's one we'll always remember.
These days, all aspects of technology are used to combat insurance fraud, even social media. In the summer of 2009, an insurance company was contacted by a policyholder who'd had an unusual accident. Sarah Hill is the fraud partner at a firm of solicitors who worked on the case.
The vehicle owner claimed that he had attended a fun day. It was a Ferrari fun day where there was lots of events going on, but one of those events was that Ferrari owners could take their vehicle, be involved in actually taking members of the public around the track for a small fee.
This fee was then donated to charity. The policyholder had spent the day giving rides in his Ferrari to raise money for good causes. But what started with such good intentions ended in disaster as the day drew to a close.
The owner had suggested that he was on his way out of that fun day when he'd lost control of the vehicle because of a greasy surface, and the vehicle had spun and hit a tree. The petrol tank caught fire and the vehicle went up in flames.
Luckily, the occupants of the car managed to scramble to safety.
With a significant vehicle fire, the vehicle was declared a total loss, and the claim that had been presented was for the value of the vehicle at around £50,000.
Such large claims are subject to investigation by insurance companies as a matter of course, and they looked in detail at the story. The owner had said that the accident occurred close to the entrance to the venue.
But actually, when investigators have gone to look at the accident circumstances, the physical evidence didn't support the accident occurring close to the main gate.
The traces of fire damage that were still present on site indicated that the accident had actually occurred away from the exit. With their suspicions aroused, the investigators took the unusual step of exploring social media for further evidence of what had happened.
As you can imagine, it was quite a high-profile day, a fundraising event. It's quite unusual to have a Ferrari spin off the track and hit a tree and catch fire. So there was some, on local chat rooms, on social media, conversations taking place between members of the public that had actually attended the day.
But it was a video of the accident recorded by a member of the public and posted to a popular internet site that particularly caught their eye.
The YouTube footage helped us place the accident location. It was completely different to what the owner had actually alleged.
But the footage on its own wasn't enough, so the investigators collected witness statements. What they discovered from people who were there on the day sent the owner's story up in flames.
Their evidence indicated that it wasn't the owner of the Ferrari vehicle that had been driving the Ferrari at the time of the accident, and in fact it was his friend who was uninsured.
This was totally unexpected. Not only was the owner being untruthful about the location of the crash, he wasn't even driving at the time. This was to have massive consequences.
In order to make a claim for the value of the vehicle under his policy of insurance, the Ferrari owner had to have been driving the Ferrari vehicle at the time of the accident.
But since he wasn't, he'd be out of pocket to the tune of £50,000, the cost of the car. This huge potential loss was what motivated him to lie to his insurer and submit a claim in which he falsely stated that he was driving at the time of the accident.
He was not entitled to claim and clearly put forward a fraudulent claim in alleging he was driving the vehicle.
The case was passed to the authorities and proceeded to court.
Initially, the Ferrari owner pleaded not guilty, which was very surprising to me in light of the extent of the overwhelming evidence. Later on, he did actually plead guilty to the offence. He received 200 hours unpaid work and a fine for his crime.
6 months on from its formation, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED, is continuing to investigate suspected fraudsters.
Can we come in and have a look?
Today, they're on the trail of 4 suspects linked to a case of alleged money laundering. They drew a blank at the first address, but the second suspect was home and has just been arrested.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of money laundering.
As they move upstairs to start searching for evidence, the suspect seems to be in shock.
Understand why you've been arrested, haven't you?
It's in relation to a cheque for over £6,500 that's gone into your bank account. It's quite a lot of money, hence the arrest and suspicion of money laundering.
Okay.
All right? Okay.
It's vital that the IFED team collects enough evidence to make the case stand up, and they gather together a range of potentially relevant documentation.
Cash passports, currency card.
Suddenly, a breakthrough comes from the suspect.
He's just made a significant statement which we're taking note of, which he'll sign. He's admitted to his mother and to us that he has taken that cheque, accepted that cheque. He was approached apparently by a man on the street.
Do you want my PMB?
The suspect is then taken to a local police station for further questioning, and the IFED team talks things through with his mother.
We don't want to keep him in unnecessarily, so...
No,
right.
it just doesn't make sense.
What doesn't make sense?
You know...
Why he would do it?
Not only that. If he did, where's the money gone? Because he's at university, we've been giving him money.
I know. We don't know where it's gone. So we'll find out when we interview, and I'm sure you'll manage to get the information out of him when he comes home. The mother was distressed in the respect that obviously her son's just been arrested, and on speaking to Mum, she's brought her 3 children up to tell the truth and be honest, and I think she was more upset by the fact that he hasn't been honest and has admitted that more or less to her.
There are still arrests to be made, and IFED hits the road. Their destination is the family home of the third suspect. The door is answered by his mother.
Hello. Hello. Hiya, I'm DC Sibley from the City of London Police. It's in relation to a matter we're investigating in relation to insurance fraud.
And again, they draw a blank as they're told he's away.
OK. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks very much.
She's informed me that he's at university, which is typical. Another one bites the dust. On to the next one.
The arrest of the 4th and final suspect at his family home is going to prove tricky.
The last address we're going to, there are 2 people there with the same name.
Again, the 4th suspect is alleged to have received a large cheque that was paid into his bank account.
Good afternoon, City of London Police. This is my colleague, DC Eisman.
The door is opened by one of the residents, but IFED still needs to positively identify the suspect.
It's in relation to a cheque for £12,000 to this address.
The man who opens the door can't seem to shed any light on the cheque, but Kate isn't prepared to leave it there.
Can we come in and try and get to the bottom of this?
The man explains that he's alone in the house. Kate talks to him about his other relatives, and it seems likely that the younger brother is the one that the police need to talk to.
Yeah, that fits the profile of the other people that we've been arresting today. So.
They call up the brother in question while he's still at work, and he asks if they can wait for him to finish.
No, doesn't work like that, sorry.
IFED speaks to the family member further, and it turns out that in addition to the two relatives with the same name living at the address, there's a further relative who shares the name as well.
No one's admitting to it, which is not really a great surprise because it's a £12,000 cheque that's gone through the account.
It's vital that a positive identification can be made so that the correct person is arrested. With so many people linked to one address with the same name and of a similar age, it's tricky to identify who is who. Kate makes a decision and speaks to the younger brother herself.
We're City of London Police. We're up from London. We're going to get all the full identification of all of you and we'll ascertain what account this cheque was paid into. Because if it is you, then we will come knocking, all right? He was helpful on the phone. He's given me his mobile number and all his full details, so we have all those now.
Before they can make the arrest, they need to investigate the bank account that the money was paid into, so they can match it to the correct suspect.
I think a bad judgment call to arrest all of them, because we don't know which one it relates to.
But there was good news for the case in the weeks to come. The information that they collected on the day allowed IFED to make 3 further arrests. The investigation is ongoing, and the team are hopeful they'll be able to get a positive result. Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds a year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even fake deaths. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
The CCTV cameras are the best tool we've got in our fight against fraud.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques.
This is connected to a bank account and a second mobile phone number.
And a newly formed dedicated police unit.
Police, get back!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers, cheats on the fiddle. Now they're caught in the act, and claimed and shamed. Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is raiding 2 houses in a hunt for suspects.
Police!
A suspicious incident on a roundabout illustrates that the roads are far from safe.
Now, we believe that was an induced crash and the 2 other cars were acting in collusion with each other.
And one claimer appears to have made a surprising recovery, if these pictures are anything to go by. Insurers are increasingly using surveillance to combat insurance fraud, which makes even the most meticulous of deceptions unlikely to succeed, as this next case shows. A serious motorway collision resulted in a victim's vehicle being forced against a central reservation. Due to the extent of his injuries, the victim subsequently submitted a claim for compensation. Jeff Owen is a consultant with national law firm Greenwoods, which has a specialist anti-fraud group that worked on the case.
He had sustained injuries to his neck, his shoulder, and his arms, as a result of which he had loss of sensation in both of his arms. And this meant, he said, that he couldn't drive because, as well as the physical injury, he also had a psychological aversion to travel.
The claimant said that all these factors meant he was unable to return to his job.
When you have a claim which involves an inability to work or to travel, it begins to escalate. And this claim reached the heady numbers of £500,000. Obviously that's a claim which the insurers take very seriously indeed.
As part of the claims process, he went for medical examinations to assess the extent of his injuries and the length of recovery.
Early on, the doctors were suggesting that he should be able to return to work within about 2 years. He also went for psychiatric assessment, and the doctor there thought that from a psychiatric point of view, he was probably fit to return to work after about 6 months. So it was very surprising when he hadn't returned to work quite quickly after the accident.
The growing claim and the fact that he hadn't returned to his job led them to investigate further.
There were suspicions raised at an early stage that the type of claim which was arising was out of proportion to the injury that had been sustained.
This gave the insurer serious misgivings, so they decided to put the claimant under surveillance and brought in a team of specialist investigators. The man who led the project has to remain anonymous so that he could continue to work in the field. The first challenge was to track down the claimant.
We were given 3 different addresses. He moved around quite a bit. He was quite evasive initially, and he lived in high-rise blocks of flats. So that is straight away a difficulty because you have to ID the claimant first.
But they were eventually able to pinpoint where he lived and started surveillance on the main door to the block of flats, the only way in or out, or so they thought.
We had placed him under a fair few periods of surveillance, but he didn't come out at any time, which we thought was rather strange.
The surveillance continued, and eventually they made a breakthrough.
It transpired that the claimant was first sighted when he came out of a back ground floor lounge door, which led out onto an enclosed patio, and then he scaled a 4.5-foot wrought iron railing fence. That was his mode of access every time he left the property and went back into the property. I mean, you try and take a fairly impartial view when you get on plot, but when somebody jumps over a railing, comes out of it was a very unusual thing to do.
Not only was he displaying athletic abilities that were inconsistent with the level of injury he was claiming for, but his behaviour also implied that he suspected he was being observed. The undercover filming continued, and more revelations were to come.
He suggested that he couldn't drive, and we filmed him driving. He said he had difficulty getting in and out of vehicles, but the film that we obtained of him clearly showed that he didn't have difficulties getting in and out of vehicles.
As the video footage carries on, he not only continues to drive long distances, but he starts to go shopping, and one day returns home with a huge weight of bottles of water. For a man who wasn't supposed to be able to use his arms, particularly to carry weights of any degree, that was quite surprising.
The video evidence was shot over a significant period of time and appeared to directly contradict the level of injury being claimed.
As non-medical experts, he didn't appear to be in any particular pain or discomfort. He wasn't grimacing. He didn't have to stop.
Eventually, the case went to court, and the claimant argued for a substantial payout. But the insurer's video evidence questioned his version of events.
He represented himself, didn't do very well. He eventually received £9,500, which was for the genuine injury that he had sustained, but the rest of his claim was disallowed by the judge.
That meant that he received only a tiny proportion of the huge amount that he originally demanded.
It's difficult to know why claimants do this sort of thing. It can really only be driven by greed. There's a feeling that there's a cash cow out there that they want to tap into. What they have to realise is that increasingly insurers are becoming aware of this sort of activity and are doing their very best to stop it.
An insurer sniffs out a snide claim for a supposedly lost Rolex.
If the claim was genuine, we would be able to pay her for the loss that had actually occurred.
And a van driver is apparently targeted by a suspected crash gang.
I think pretty clearly, soon afterwards, I think he knew that there'd been a problem.
In the fight against the growing problem of insurance fraud, an elite police squad have come together to form IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Departments.
Insurance fraud isn't a victimless crime. £50 of each premium you pay each year goes to the fraudsters. We have been set up to tackle that problem.
This dedicated team works tirelessly to bang up the crooks and con men getting rich off other people's money.
Please get back!
It is our intention to create a climate of fear for the fraudster. There's every chance that an IFED detective may come knocking on their door to arrest them for committing an insurance fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
By April 2012, after only 6 months of operating, they had already busted 80 fraudsters, adding up to £12 million of fraud under investigation.
These people are criminals. These are nasty people. They don't go out to work on a Monday morning like most people do. Their work is submitting insurance fraud claims.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is investigating an alleged large-scale car insurance fraud involving multiple suspects and several locations. DS Mark Forster is leading the investigation and he's travelling with his team to make a raid on the first address.
We are going to execute search warrants and hopefully make 5 arrests in relation to the fraudulent setting up of motor trade policies. And they're doing it purely so that they can get access to the motor insurance database. To therefore sell on insurance, basically. So what they're doing is they're targeting young drivers in London, charging them £300, £400, £500 each for them to then have their vehicles put on the motor insurance database, which shows them as basically being insured, when in fact they're not.
The team arrive at the property. They're hoping to find 4 suspects, so the size of the operation means they've called in extensive backup.
Please open up!
So what he's got.
Hello there, you want?
The door is opened by one of the residents and they're in.
Police! Where are they? Police officers! Please! Please!
Just stay there for me, please. Do you want to get some clothes on now and get up, please?
Just come
In
downstairs.
a moment, we've got you on. We'll put everyone downstairs in the lounge, explain what's going on.
Meanwhile, in a nearby neighbourhood, TI Alex Cooley is about to lead the raid on the second property.
We're just moving into position now with a couple of people on the back door, and I'm going to be going in the front door along with the support group with these guys in uniform.
Come down, mate. Please, police. Come down now, please. Now, get down to the door or it's going in, mate. Open up the door, it's going to be open.
It's taking too long.
I can do it. It's all right.
At the last minute, the man complies and opens the door.
Morning. To the alarm police. You've got Section 8 warrant signature prints.
They enter the house and go through the rooms.
Yes, hi, we're from the City of London Police. We've got a warrant from the magistrates to search for any documentation relating to insurance fraud. So we're interested in motor insurance fraud, yeah. So that's why we're here, and we will aim to do things as quick as possible.
Back at the first property, Mark has arranged for the suspects to be gathered in the lounge.
I'm arresting you, okay, on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud, okay, and also on suspicion of money laundering, okay? I'll caution you, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
In the city? I know we didn't. Yeah, we'll interview you.
Nothing inside your waistband.
In all, 4 suspects are formally arrested, searched and handcuffed.
Just relax and...
They are then taken from the house for further questioning at a local police station. IFED suspects that they're involved in fraudulently adding uninsured cars to the motor insurers database. But they'll only be able to back that up if they find evidence from a thorough search of the house.
You do get the impression that they don't cover their tracks as well as other fraudsters might do.
One of the most prevalent and dangerous forms of car insurance fraud is the induced collision. This is where gang members drive two cars in such a way as to cause an innocent driver to smash into the back of them, giving the impression that they're to blame for the accident and therefore liable to pay out on their insurance. It's known as crash for cash, and it works like this. First, the gang choose a victim. Then they move their two cars into position in front of the target. Gang car number 1 then slams on its brakes. Gang car 2 reacts by braking hard, resulting in a rear-end shunt from the victim. Gang car 1 then turns off at the next possible turning, pretending to be unaware of the crash. Fleet vehicles are especially at risk because fraudsters need to ensure victims have insurance. Peter Oakes is the head of fraud at a law firm that worked with a company targeted by one such gang. He dealt with one case which appeared at first glance to be a standard collision.
The car was going round a roundabout. It came to a sudden halt as a result of the actions of another vehicle, and the Ocado van is alleged to have gone into the back of the claimant vehicle.
The company was then contacted by the driver of the car, who submitted a substantial compensation claim.
3 claims for personal injury, there was vehicle damage, credit hire, storage charges, all of the usual things that go alongside the personal injury claims that are made. In addition to that, the claimant's solicitor's fees as well. In total, if the claim had gone through and been successful, it would have cost Ocado about £40,000.
But what the claimant didn't realise was that the company was using cutting-edge technology.
The vans are all fitted with cameras which record continuously throughout the journey on a half-an-hour loop. Every time there's a car crash, every time there's a vehicle incident, the driver reports it into his manager, and that winds its way through to our in-house insurance department, who will look at the camera footage from that incident.
The footage in this case was studied to see if it matched the claimant's version of events. Instead, it told a significantly different story.
What it actually shows is the Ocado vehicle going onto a roundabout, and you can see that it's preceded by 2 vehicles, a Vauxhall Severa and a Vauxhall Corsa. You can see the Severa in particular, he appears to indicate that he doesn't quite know where he's going. He goes to leave the roundabout and then turns right back onto the roundabout at the last minute, apparently leaving the Corsa with nowhere to go. The Corsa brakes, performs an emergency braking manoeuvre, and you can see the Ocado vehicle is only just able to stop in time.
Now, we believe that was an induced crash and the 2 other cars were acting in collusion with each other.
The key thing the footage shows is that there is no collision. Thanks to the driver's quick reactions, he managed to brake in time to avoid a smash. The evidence clearly disproves the claimant's story and also appears to show there was an attempt at an induced collision.
I don't know whether the driver in this case knew that he'd been the victim of crash for cash, but you can certainly hear the element of surprise in his voice.
That was close, man.
He pulls over after the accident and exchange details. I think pretty clearly soon afterwards, I think he knew that there'd been a problem.
With solid proof that there was no collision, the company took action.
We sent a letter to the claimant solicitors and said that we weren't going to pay the claim. In our belief, it was fraudulent in its entirety, and as is typical, we didn't hear from those solicitors again.
Thanks to the state-of-the-art video evidence, the claimant didn't get away with a payout for a collision that never happened and was left empty-handed. Between 2010 and 2011, 750,000 house burglaries were reported in the UK, and insurers received domestic and personal theft claims totalling £415 million. Whilst for most people, a burglary is a traumatic event, others see it as a golden opportunity to make some quick cash. Paul Hubbard is the head of counter-fraud at an insurance company which was landed with one such spurious claim.
In this case, the customer submitted a claim to us for a burglary. There were a number of high-value items, including a £2,500 Rolex watch.
With such a high-value item listed on the claim form, the insurer needed to find out more.
Our next step in this case was to go and speak to her and find out more detail from her personally about what had happened and see if we could find some proof of ownership that if the claim was genuine, we would be able to pay her for the loss that had actually occurred.
But when the investigator asked to see proof of ownership of the watch, things started to unravel for the claimant.
One of the things he suggested was perhaps she would have a photograph of the watch. She said she did, but unfortunately it had been wiped from her BlackBerry. So she explained that while she no longer had a photograph of the watch, she knew her friend did.
When they received the photograph of the watch almost 2 months later, forensic image analysis led to an intriguing development in the case.
So they looked at the photograph, and what they actually found was that the photograph had been taken after the loss had happened. So she was lying to us.
Unbeknown to the claimant, hidden in the photograph was information that proved they were lying. The secret data told the insurer the exact time and date of when the photo was taken. And it was taken a full 17 days after the watch was said to have been lost.
Most of our customers are genuine customers, but on this occasion, I think this person got very greedy.
Greedy, and it seems unwilling to let the matter lie.
So despite the evidence that we'd presented, we were quite surprised to find that she then decided to refer this matter to the Financial Ombudsman. She wasn't happy to walk away and accept that she'd got caught committing a fraud.
But, unfortunately for the claimant, the Ombudsman wasn't falling for it either.
So all the details of this case were sent to the Financial Ombudsman, who upheld the decision that we had made to turn down her claim.
It would seem that for fraudsters, Rolex watches present an irresistible opportunity.
We see lots of claims for Rolex watches, and the vast majority of them are genuine. But where the story goes that actually there have been more Rolex watches stolen and claimed for through insurance companies than have actually ever been made.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is raiding 2 properties as part of an investigation into a suspected fraud involving the motor insurance database. In return for a fee, a gang is believed to be fraudulently adding cars to the database, which shows them as being insured when they're not. The aim of the raids is to arrest and question a group of suspects and find evidence relating to the alleged motor insurance fraud and suspected money laundering. The IFED team has already arrested the main suspects in the first house. Meanwhile, the raid on the second house is being led by TI Alex Cooley. The residents are brought down to the lounge, and Alex identifies the suspect he believes is involved with the alleged insurance fraud.
Well, I'm arresting you for insurance fraud relating to abuse of motor trader policies. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you fail to mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be used in evidence. We'll be back soon.
The IFED team needs to find documentary evidence to support their investigation into insurance fraud and money laundering. As they start the search for both motor insurance and financial information, Alex gets the suspect to show him where he stores his cash.
Yeah, just 1,000 cash.
Okay, so how much is that there?
£1,000.
That's 1,000. Okay.
Alex decides that the suspect should be taken back to the police station for further questioning, and he's led away. Back at the first house, the team led by DS Mark Forster is searching for evidence to support the investigation.
We're looking for mobile phones, obviously computers, which I've not seen too many of, any sort of data storage devices, USB type sticks and stuff like that, and also obviously documentation relating to any of the 7 companies that the motor trade policies have been taken out in. Any insurance documentation at all that relates to any of those policies or any other policies which we think might have been incepted fraudulently.
Just found a certificate of motor insurance. Looks like it's been photocopied rather than printed off anywhere.
A potentially crucial discovery is found inside the suspect's car.
In the doorwell you've got, at this address, new vehicle quotation. Basic price 91, 118 all in with all the modifications, all the extras. It looks like he's paid 10 grand in. then maybe another £2,000 as a finance agreement. Very nice. On order.
The documentation shows that the suspect has on order a £118,000 top-of-the-range new car. The potential expenditure is relevant to the investigation because IFED has the power to look at suspect spending patterns and financial arrangements. Back inside, Mark is on the hunt for information about the suspect's bank accounts.
They've been arrested for money laundering, and we'd like to sort of, start seeing where the money's going, what money they've got in various different accounts, because if there is a large amount of money, our financial investigators can put a restraining order on that money. And it's down to them to prove, basically, that that money's been obtained by legitimate means.
As well as the bank details, Mark has also identified an insurance document that could be relevant.
Motor Trade Cover Note. Alliance is the insurance company, and that was incepted or operational from the 23rd of July this year. People who are into this type of fraud look upon it as a bit of a safe way of making quite a lot of money. And it was pretty much unheard of people being arrested for this sort of level of fraud against insurance companies, until now, obviously. So you do get the impression that they don't cover their tracks as well as other fraudsters might do.
Back at the second property, the search for evidence continues. It's vital for the investigation that they find documentation to support the case. Suddenly, Alex makes what could be a significant discovery.
Letter to do with some collision, road traffic collision. Here we go. That's interesting, look. We've got a crib sheet. Ah, excellent. We've got a map and a crib sheet here. I've heard of these, I've never actually found one myself, but you will occasionally find a map and an explanation of what to say. So what I have here is a map showing two cars colliding with each other, and then an explanation. I was driving out on the main road, the third-party driver pulled out from give way and hit me on the passenger side, middle and rear.
Alex and his team have bagged everything up and are about to move out when one final key piece of evidence is identified.
This document here is one of a series which I found in a box on the suspect's wardrobe, which does concern a motor trade policy with a company that we were interested in. So, so far so good. We've basically found what we came here for.
Back at the first property, the gathering of evidence is also in full swing. Mark checks inside a safe he's found in one of the bedrooms.
Rings, chains.
This find could be significant, as buying gold can be a way of laundering money.
Really, I'm quite pleased. I think that we've got everything that we could have hoped to have found. We found two large amounts of cash in excess of £1,000, a large amount of gold.
The sizable amount of evidence that IFED has collected from the house needs further investigation, so they'll be packing it up and taking it back to their HQ. As the raids draw to a close, IFED has successfully tracked down and arrested all 5 suspects and collected a significant amount of evidence. The next stage is for IFED to put together a case using what's been found. In the short time the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department has been in existence, they've already investigated over £8 million worth of suspected insurance fraud. They've got a huge battle on their hands, but they're ready to take the fight to the fraudsters.